The opinions of the guests and host are their own and do not represent the opinions of IRONCLAD, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
Countries change, countries evolve, and as a society, it's better to adapt and overcome to those changes. What I would like to see is the United States adopting a humanistic approach instead of a nationalistic approach to the country in general. Because right now, with our laws and with our constitution, we have a nationalistic ideology, meaning that your rights as an individual are dependent of your citizenship. What I would like to see is a change from that nationalistic ideal to a humanistic ideal, where the protection of the law is extended to every single man, woman, and child just because they are human beings.
We cut through the partisan talking points. We're not interested in perpetuating fear. We're interested in seeking truth, hearing what's really going on America's borderland. Welcome to Borderland, an Ironclad original. Today, we're bringing you a conversation I had with Daniel Torres. Daniel Torres is said to be one of the first deported veterans to be granted citizenship. His story is truly fascinating, and he is very passionate about advocating for deported veterans' rights. I'm going to be honest, our conversation did not go as planned, and it happens. Daniel was very adamant about talking about different subject, and so we took it there for a while, and I entertained it, and I felt I did my best to bring it back on the tracks. I'm very passionate about the subject of deported veterans, but this conversation didn't allow me to dig into his personal story, but yet his personal beliefs. And so when talking about the border, immigration rights, homeland security, people can be very emotional about the subject. And I think it's important to show you how the discussion went, because even though we didn't get to talk about his story, his powerful and important story, we got to talk about different areas that I think are of interest for the audience. So I hope you like it. If you wouldn't mind, for the viewers, would you give us a short bio of who you are and your background?
Yeah, of course. My name is Daniel Torres. I'm a former United States Marine. Grew up in Utah. Joined the United States Marine Corps in 2007. When I joined, I was without legal status. I was an illegal immigrant, undocumented. However, I was enlisted as an American citizen. When that came to light, as I'm getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan, and the reason why it came out to light is that I was picking up a rank. I was becoming a corporal, and I was selected for intel into Afghanistan. This was back during the Helmand Surge, and I was going to be deploying with 1st MEF. And on the course of getting my clearance, it came to light that I was not a citizen, that I was undocumented, and I was discharged from the Marine Corps, and I went back down to Tijuana, where I was born. In Tijuana, I went to law school, and in the course of going to law school, I met Hector Barajas from the Deported Veteran Support House, and I started meeting with deported veterans. And it was through the work of the Deported Veteran Support House and through the ACLU of Southern California that I was able to become a citizen in 2016. I've been an advocate for deported veterans for 10 years now, and I've been a military advisor, a script advisor, and legal advisor for numerous documentaries and films.
It's great. You said that you joined the military and they had you down as an American citizen. Was that like by accident?
No, it was not by accident. You have to understand, this was 2007, middle of the Iraq War. Nobody wanted to enlist, and people were desperate. And recruiters have quotas just like everybody else. So they're, sometimes some people, they bend the rules a little bit just to meet those quotas. And back in those times, I was young, dumb, and I was 21. I was doing nothing with my life. So I figured, hey, if I have this opportunity to join the military, I'm going to take it. At least, I can say that I did something for the country, that I call home.
And you knew what could potentially happen of that? Or was the recruiter saying, hey, don't worry, they'll get you your citizenship eventually?
That's what I was told. They're like, as soon as you join, you become a citizen, and that's what a lot of people were told. And that's not the case. Military service is a pathway to citizenship, but it does not guarantee citizenship, and it is not automatic. So a lot of people still have to go through that bureaucracy, still have to jump through the hoops, and it is through jumping through those hoops that some get left behind, and that's when these kind of things happen. Deported veterans, it is a byproduct of our immigration laws, which are broken, which make no sense, and they don't make any sense neither for the benefit of the country or for the benefit of immigrants.
Yeah, I agree with that. Tell me about, let's go back a little bit. When did you come to America? How was that journey?
I was 12 years old. This was back, we weren't living in Tijuana. My parents are Christians. So Tijuana, when I was a kid, it was very rough. It's still very rough. It's a rough city. So they wanted something better. At that time, my dad, he's an engineer, electromechanical engineer. So he had a work visa to come to the United States, and he took us to Utah to live. Now, I came to the United States as a minor, right? And because my dad had his visa, I could come in as his dependent. Problem with that is that once you turn 18 years old, you really don't have a way to transition from being a dependent of a legal immigrant to being a legal immigrant yourself. So at 18 years old, I became undocumented because now I was an adult.
That's crazy how that works.
Yeah.
Was there no process, and forgive me for my ignorance, I really don't know this answer. Is there no process from when you were 12 years old until you were 18 that your parents probably could have done that can help assist in getting your citizenship at that time, or a permanent, green card of some sort?
No, because my dad was not a citizen. As a matter of fact, my father did not become a permanent resident until about 2 years ago. After working in the United States for 30 years. And the reason why he got his green card is because I asked for him as a citizen. So my dad brings me in legally. I become illegal. I leave. I come back a citizen. And then I request my dad. That's how my journey was.
The American way.
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't make sense at all. No, I understand completely. So you were in the Marines, and then when they found out you weren't a citizen, that's when they decided to chapter you out, or did you do your full time? I was kind of missed on that.
I got discharged like 5 months before my contract was up, and I lost my GI Bill.
Are you kidding me? Were you able to try and fight that and kind of retroactivate that again?
No. So I have a general and honorable conditions, meaning that you're good for everything, but you lose your GI Bill. You need your honorable discharge for your GI Bill. And I did request an upgrade a few years ago to the Navy board, but it was denied because of fraudulent enlistment. That's what I was discharged for.
But that wasn't even on you. That was your recruiter.
I knew, I knew I wasn't a citizen, but I was like, hey, I literally have no other better options in my life. And that's one of the tragedies about our immigration system. A lot of people have a lot of weird ideas, mostly because of media, they don't know what they're talking about. Right? When they talk about the immigration crisis, when they talk about immigration reform, when they talk about what's going on the border, I mean, I could go on for hours on how wrong media has it and how wrong a lot of American people have it when it comes to immigration and when it comes to what's going on the border.
Well, in your opinion, I'd love to hear what that is.
Well, for starters, let's do something recent, right? Recently, there's been a lot of news about the crisis in the border. We have a border crisis, an immigration crisis. Actually, we don't. We don't have an immigration crisis. A lot more immigrants are leaving. A lot more Latin American immigrants are leaving the United States than coming in. compared to the last 30 years, right? The big surge of immigration in the United States happened in the 1980s and the 1990s. After the Obama administration, actually immigration rates of illegal crossings started going down. Now, the reason really why this country is so obsessed with immigration reform is because of money. When it comes to, specifically when it comes to for-profit prisons cannot detain, I believe it's at the federal level, right? American citizens, but you can use federal funds, federal taxes for immigration purposes in for-profit prisons.
Well, hold on. So I worked at a for-profit prison. Not proud of that at all. I didn't know anything about it until later on. But a for-profit prison can still take a California contract or a state contract. Into those contracts, they can house anyone. They can house any American citizen. They also house immigration process, right? So anyone in the immigration process who's been, who's in holding or awaiting deportation can be housed at a prison as well, because there is no other holding we have for them. And so that's correct. But also, I'll state that there's more illegal immigration entering the United States more than ever. That's proven document for statistical facts. And so, like, that claim is something I've never heard. What you just said. There's more than, I think it was 9 million people have entered illegally into this country currently. That's more than it's ever happened. So that argument does make sense to me, even what you just stated.
Right. Where are you getting those facts from?
Facts, you can go into the Border Patrol. You can go into the CBP website, and it'll explain to you exactly how many are apprehended every month. They'll give you those numbers. Those numbers right now are astronomically larger than any other year.
Right. So do those numbers include the asylum seekers in immigrant caravans?
Yeah, so those are still yet to be determined whether it is asylum or not, because they still have to go through a process. People are coming over saying asylum from every country. That doesn't mean that they are asylum cases per se. They're using that currently because of form of manipulation, right? Because this is what the cartel is telling them. So a lot of those are using them just as a means of getting through the system.
So what I would be very curious to find out is how much, like, what is the differences are between the illegal immigrants coming to the country that are apprehended and the overall umbrella
of asylum seekers.
What you're stating is that of just undocumented immigrants in general, and our asylum seekers being lumped in to that umbrella term.
Well, it comes down to a really weird argument of, if anyone enters the country outside of the port of entry, it is still entering illegally, whether it is asylum seeker or not.
Right.
That's another issue we have, is that if
and that's a huge issue, because that kind of like offsets the numbers, right? Because everything gets lumped in together, right? So what my concern is, are we using the term illegal immigrant as an umbrella term, or are we actually looking in specifically what that means and what that is made up for? Because
you think the illegal immigration situation we have here is a means of making money?
Yeah, currently, absolutely.
Who's making that money?
For-profit prisons.
Who owns those?
Let me get the name of the companies.
I know the companies. There's CCA, California Corporation.
Geo Group is one of them, I think.
Yeah, Corrections Corporation of America, Geo Group, and I think there's one other.
Yeah, there's one other, and these companies were, not the company specifically, but their facilities were actually named on the immigration bill that was tried to pass. And what I found very, very alarming about the facilities name on that immigration bill is that these facilities were actually shut down for abuse reports.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not trying to devil's advocate everything. I know the system because I worked it for 2 years, and private prison entity is very. It can be very corrupt, because when you start putting a dollar sign on putting people in jail, it becomes a business. And when it becomes a business, it's easy to become corrupt, because
absolutely,
then you make more money while putting more people in jail.
Exactly.
So I absolutely agree with how that can be a means of why immigration. Okay, I take that argument because I don't agree with private prisons as well. What is a weird part about a private prison, as someone who is a prison guard there, is that the inmates are the money, and so the prison guards are the liability, which
Exactly.
means even if I upheld security at the prison system level, say there's a fight, this is a true story, a fight between two inmates, and I broke it up. The one who's still being an aggressor, I have to take him down and control him,
Right.
right? So then he goes to sue me because of use of force.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? You see what I'm saying? And then what happens is the prison backs him up because he's the money.
Exactly.
I'm the liability.
And that's why I say that our current immigration system does not benefit the country and does not benefit immigrants. Because, okay, let's continue with the devil's advocate thought here, and let's look at it from a money issue, right? Instead of having a workforce of individuals that come in and are able to and are willing to work, because immigrants, sure, there's always going to be those immigrants that are coming in to be part of a drug network. There's always going to be immigrants that are coming in with not the best intentions, but they are not the majority. Those people are the minority. Most of immigrants come in and they want to have a peaceful life and a stable job. When you give someone a stable job and a place in your society, that person has the great potential to become a productive member of society. So instead of bolstering our economy, having a willing workforce, a workforce that is willing to pay taxes. Instead, we're taking those people, we're putting them in holding facilities, and we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars of tax money on those individuals and getting absolutely nothing back as a society from that, other than prison gangs, other than more taxes, other than corrupt organizations, and at the end of the day, a public fiasco of how we treat immigrants.
So I'll say this. That's not currently what's happening, but I'll get to that after. What would you rather see than putting them into holding?
I would rather see, well, I know what I would like to see. And see, what I see when it comes to immigration in the United States, what I see is a problem with our ideology. It's an ideology conflict between what we can become as a country, what we can evolve as a society, and the conservative faction, right? The conservative faction wants to maintain the country as it is, wants to maintain American values, wants to go back to how things were. Unfortunately, that is not very practical and it's not very realistic, because countries change, countries evolve, and as a society, it's better to adapt and overcome to those changes. What I would like to see is the United States adopting a humanistic approach instead of a nationalistic approach to the country in general. Because right now, with our laws and with our Constitution, we have a nationalistic ideology, meaning that your rights as an individual are dependent of your citizenship. What I would like to see is a change from that nationalistic ideal to a humanistic ideal, where the protection of the law is extended to every single man, woman, and child just because they are human beings.
So as soon as they get to America, then they reap all the benefits of America?
Not necessarily. So let's go to Fantasyland for a minute. Let's say the United States adopts open borders like Mexico, right? Like open immigration, right? And everybody's welcome to come in and everybody's allowed to benefit from the country and work in peace. All right. Well, you got to pay your taxes. You have to not commit crimes, right? You have to be a productive member of society. Well, you're not going to jump into citizen right off the bat, right? You have to go. Every immigration process across the world has a period of residency. Why don't we make residency more available to people who just want to work and live in peace?
I think that's a different argument. I'll say this. I think when you say we should be more not a national, how did you say that?
Nationalistic ideology.
Nationalistic. I think we are the land that people run to because of who we are.
Yes.
If we weren't, then we would be Mexico. Then we would be every other country, and it would be fleeing from there to find another country that has the same freedoms America does. I think America works, and that's why people run to come here. Now, is there issues? Absolutely. I think Gary Vee said something recently is like, just because, say, the Dodgers won the World Series doesn't mean every Dodgers player on that team provided value to that team, right? And so in the same aspect is America for a reason, right? Well, that's why you came here. That's why you fought here. That's why you're still here. That's why other people fight to get here. And if we change that, well, then we're no longer America. We're just like every other country. And then this ceases to exist. And it'll be us running to another border to try and find some place that's happy that'll give us the same opportunities. I think we can't lose sight of that. Say that again?
Completely disagree. And I'll tell you why. People run to the United States not because of who we are, not of course who we are, a country, but because we're just better, like where to live, right?
We're just better.
More stability, more security.
Yes.
Like, if people usually do not want to leave their home, they really don't. They really don't.
I agree with that.
Right?
I agree with that.
So for an immigrant, and I know this as an immigrant, for an immigrant to uproot themselves and go to a completely foreign land, there's more to that than America is the greatest country in the world. And more than likely, it's because their countries are, failing.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely failing.
And they came to the country that's not. We have to acknowledge that. You're not acknowledging the fact that
we have to acknowledge that. But see, why are those countries failing? If we are the most powerful country in history, and we are the most powerful country in history, then we also have a responsibility to make sure that we do not abuse that power. And throughout the last 100 years, the United States intelligence services have abused that power, creating instability everywhere in the world, including Latin America. And what ends up happening is that we destabilize those countries in order to have more influence in those countries, in order to benefit our money, our organizations. And then when those countries fail and those people run to the United States, we say, oh my God, it's because those countries are terrible and we're better. No, I mean,
not necessarily.
If we break Latin America, we shouldn't be.
I think those are very dramatic. Those are very dramatic speaking points.
Yes,
I agree. Yes, America has its fingers in a lot of areas and maybe has definitely helped destabilize some countries. Absolutely, I don't think America would deny that. Right? No. I don't think America would deny that. I don't think America's intention was that. But when you dabble some other country, you really don't know how sensitive that ecosystem is.
Yes.
Right. And so I don't think I'm not oblivious to that. And I say this before, I don't want to use a time machine to try and make my now answer correct. Right. You can't use the time machine. Look, we've been doing this for hundreds of years. Well, currently we're still the country that people run to. We're still the country that people come here to seek asylum. And when they seek asylum, they say, I love this country. It's giving me opportunity. Right. We are not the country that destroyed El Salvador, who's now taken control of their country back. We're not necessarily the country that's totally destroyed Venezuela. As much as people want to think that, we've had people that have their opinions of it. It's kind of divided. America did and America didn't. Whose opinion is right? I don't know. Right. And so what happened? Those are all
gangs that are ruling Honduras started in the United States, and they started through immigration policies.
And they were deported. Right.
Yeah.
That's a cause and effect. That's not something intentional. Right. It's a cause and effect.
It's a cause and effect. Yes.
Right. Exactly. And that is acknowledged.
So what would have happened instead of sending them over to prison? What if those people would have been rehabilitated and made into productive members of society? And
why couldn't they do that in their own country? They were deported because they were illegal, part of the system. So what is right by the legal system at that time was to deport them if they're not a legal citizen. Just because they're a gang member or not.
100% the laws of this country. Yes.
Yeah. And so
if you are illegal, you are deported. Yes. That is the how the law is set up in the United States.
And I think that's a law not necessarily 100% perfect, but it is bipartisan. What is a sovereign nation is a country that has borders and laws, and our laws we have to uphold. So what you were saying earlier is that the prisons, that we uphold them in the prison, that's not what's been happening, over the past 2 years. They've
My
actually
question,
been, excuse me?
sorry, my question is, what is the purpose of those laws? Like, what is the purpose of deporting people, of making human beings illegal? Like, who's benefiting from
a
this?
country is a country based on its borders and its
Yes.
sovereignty,
Yes.
correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
That's how that works. And so
What is
because
the
of
end
that,
goal? How are we
the end-
benefiting from that?
how would we benefit from gang members? I'm confused. Like, why would
I'm
we
not
hold
talking
on to that?
about gang members. I'm not advocating for gang members to come in here in droves. Nobody would ever do that. That's unrealistic. I'm talking about what is the benefit of taking people who just want to work and live in peace, right? Labeling them illegal and kicking them out of the country.
I think
Who
you're stuck on the
benefits from
label. You're emotionally invested into the labeling of illegal, the term, but call them migrants. I don't care what you want to call them. If they enter outside of the port of entry based on the laws that are in place currently, they are illegal, just like I'd be illegally stealing something or whatnot. So the term is irrelevant. I think the term got pulled into an emotional argument, and now people don't like to be called illegal. Fine, you're a migrant who broke the law.
Okay,
It's irrelevant what the term is, right? It's irrelevant what the term is. Why do we do it? Well, when you have a country that's bound by laws, like I said, a sovereign nation, you have to uphold some kind of law. And if we determine, hey, we want to know who comes in out of this country, and if you break that law, well, then you have to have a repercussion. And the repercussion is not to keep you in the country you broke into, it's to send you back to your country and give you an opportunity to do it the right way. That's just the way the country, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that's exactly what it is. And why?
Yes.
Well, this is a country that is bound by that. We have to have some kind of, or if you want no walls, well, then you have no country and you have no laws. Well, then America ceases to exist. The land of opportunity that people run to because it is safe doesn't happen anymore because anyone
Unless
comes.
they're from good countries and not shithole countries, right?
And you think that who's gonna stop that? Who's gonna help funnel that one? Is it you? Can you look at 20 minutes?
If I could have an influence on immigration of
You're
this
trying to right now. You
Yes,
have a
absolutely.
pedestal. That's what I'm saying. You
Yes.
have a pedestal and you're making an attempt to do it. But I
Yes.
think you're missing bigger parts of this discussion because if you look at 100 people walking into America right now, how can I, with your eyes, see and say, that's a good guy, that's a bad guy? Oh, they're only here for work. They're not. You're not. You don't know how to do that. None of us do. Can accept them all and then hope to God they're all here for good intentions. But that's not the world we live in. We know there's outliers out there. We know there's bad people. You have kids, I'm sure. You want them to be safe.
I don't
You
know.
don't have kids. You have brothers and sisters. You have family. You want to make sure your parents, they expect to have a safe lifestyle for their kids when they raised you. Okay. And that's the same thing that every American deserves to know that this country is doing its best to keep their families safe, on top of still allowing legal immigration. How many people were allowed in this country legally last year?
See, the thing is, my problem is that if that was true, right? Like my disillusioned, I'm an individual that is disillusioned with the United States government. I am 100%, right? And I want to understand people where I'm coming from, because when you say the government wants to make sure that people are safe and that people's families are safe. All right, if that is truly true, if that is the intent of the government, then why are we not providing better healthcare or universal healthcare, right? Why are we not providing social programs that benefit families in the United States? No.
What country's better?
What country's better? Baltic countries are pretty good.
Why don't you go there? And I'm saying, why don't people go there?
Too cold.
Okay, so then you kind of have to pick what's your best situation, right? I'm not saying I don't agree with the medical. I have 8 kids. You know what my medical bills are? They're ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. I get it. But I can't sit here and pick and choose all the bad things and say, this is why I don't like this country. I sit here and say,
you are doing that. You're picking and choosing with immigrants.
No, I'm not. You're fighting the battle with the wrong dude. I'm the one guy that has the most empathy for the subject. That's why I have people like you in here, so you have an opinion on it. But I just also won't let rhetoric just exist, because there's better conversation to be had. There's smarter and more intelligent conversations to be had that actually move the needle forward for all of us and not create more division. I don't agree with more division. I don't agree with looking at America while living in America, being an American citizen, and then hating on America. I don't understand how that moves the needle in a positive direction. We can acknowledge that this country is not perfect. Fuck yes, we can all acknowledge that. Okay, but we can all acknowledge we're still here, aren't we? It's not enough for me to leave.
Yes.
So in that sense, all we can do is try and make it better. And the best way is not to demonize what we have, but to try and change it in a positive way. We don't change laws by being loud on social media. We don't change laws by just being upset about a certain thing. We have to make impacts, right? We have to get into political positions.
Yes.
We have to push the narrative. We have to explain why private prisons are not constitutional. I agree. Me and you agree on that. I don't believe in private prisons. I think when you put money in putting people in prison, that's a shady fucking scenario.
Yes.
But what we don't agree on is that, like, there is a place in this country that has to have boundaries. We have to have laws. We have to. I don't like what happened to you, right? Personally, I'm pissed that any veteran who serves this country gets deported. I think it's absolute bullshit. I think there should be a better system in place. I'll fight that battle with you. I won't fight the rest of the battle that we don't agree on. You see what I'm saying? And that's okay.
Yeah, and that's good. That's what America is. I might not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend your right to say it. You know, that's one of the things that I believe makes America what it makes. Like, we are able to sit down and have these discussions and have these.
Well, not everyone can. We can, but not everyone can.
Not everyone can, but majority of the people can. You know. I actually went to the Republican caucus here in Utah not too long ago, and yeah, you know, you got your people that wouldn't even like look at me in my face or wouldn't even talk to me. But I was pleasantly surprised. The majority of people here in the Republican caucus of Utah, they're regular people and they're concerned and they just want to find the best solution. And I was able to, you know, sit down and have a conversation with them. Didn't agree on everything, right? Because I'm not a conservative, I'm not a Republican, but I was able to sit down and still have a conversation, which I think that's a move in the right direction.
Politics has destroyed this conversation.
Yeah.
Politics destroyed this conversation because this isn't a left and a right conversation. This isn't a Democrat-Republican conversation. This is an American conversation. We all deserve to have safety in our house. We all deserve to still allow legal immigration. Now, our system currently is all kinds of fucked up, and we need to streamline processes. We need to continue to help. We need to have asylum-seeking capabilities that are smoother and faster to get acceptance in this country. Absolutely. But in that same token, we can't allow the massive numbers of illegal immigration happen without understanding that there's repercussions of that on resources. Look at all the cities that are sanctuary cities. These are cities that you would support, right? They're more on the left leaning, the more democratic cities, and now they're saying, "Hey, we can't take it anymore." No, because just the sheer numbers of people entering cities is hard to manage. That's not a legal immigration. That's just the numbers by economic standards. It's hard to house that many people and try and find them suitable living, suitable food, suitable shelter, suitable medical. All that is a struggle. So what we have right now is a challenge for all America across, because it's not just a border. They start at the border and then they leave. Please go ahead.
But the reason why that situation presents itself, the reason why they're saying, "Oh, these sanctuary cities cannot take any more people," that situation is created by the government.
Why is that?
It's created when you take all those people, those immigrants, and you bus them or fly them over to sanctuary cities. You put them in facilities. What if instead of taking all these immigrants and trying to find place to put them at the dime of our tax money, what if we make them documented, and we tell them, "All right, cool. You want to come to work in the United States? Great. Find your sponsor that can provide you home. Find yourself a sponsor that can provide you a job. Here's your tax ID number. Let us know when you're ready to work. Let us know when you're ready to live." Instead of putting the pressure of housing and providing care for all those migrants, have themselves provide housing and support for themselves.
When was the last time you were on the border?
About January, I think.
Do you see what's happening currently, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so,
I know what's happening at the border, but we don't get to create the situation and then complain about the situation that we ourselves created.
But we didn't create the massive influx. We didn't ask them to show up.
No,
you think we did?
No, we didn't.
But then they're here. So how did we create that?
Actually, I do want to talk about something. See, I went to law school in Tijuana, so I have a lot of schoolmates that are now working, in the city of Tijuana, that are working in numerous government organizations in Tijuana, right? And a couple of them mentioned something to me, mentioned that these immigrants in the Caribbean, specifically from Guatemala and El Salvador, they kept talking about a commercial on Guatemalan and Salvadorian television, a commercial that told them that if they were to just travel with the caravan to the United States would provide them with asylum and with benefits. And I don't know, since you are so plugged into this conversation, I've been trying to figure out if anybody else has heard about these commercials, and been trying to find them if they exist.
Yeah, I've never heard that, but that's interesting, and I wouldn't put it past it. It doesn't sound like it's completely false. So, very interesting. I could definitely ask around and see if we can get our hands on that, and I'll talk to my producers right now as well to reach out some of our contacts. But I don't find that far-fetched.
Yeah.
The way the government's currently being ran with this, I don't find it far-fetched. There was just recently news released that, currently we're flying people in from their countries as asylum seekers, directly from their countries. Right. Okay. So that doesn't make it feel like a commercial would be far off as well.
Right. So going back, sorry, ADHD goes.
It's okay.
But going back to what you were saying about, we're full. I don't think
I never said we're full. I never said we're full. I said the massive influx that we currently have now is hard to manage, and you can see it in your sanctuary states. It takes a lot for us to take on that many people as fast as we have and try and house them appropriately, medically appropriately, shelter appropriately.
Right. What if they can do it on their own?
Why don't they? So do you know the process of what happens when they after they get apprehended? Do you know it perfectly?
No, I don't know it perfectly.
Okay, so let me explain to you what happens. They come across, they get apprehended by law enforcement, right? Most likely it's going to be Border Patrol. Border Patrol processes them. They roll their fingerprints. They get their identity. They find out the country that they originally come from, right? And once they're done with that, then they hand them off to ICE. ICE is the person that actually finds the housing, correct? But since the system is so overwhelmed, we're finding that they have already a sponsor. They already have it written on a paper. They show up with it, whether that is taught to them by these smuggling organizations or not, irrelevant. They have it a piece of paper with a name and a phone number. That's their sponsor. They use that sponsor to get in contact with them. They give them the thumbs up. They give them the address. They give them the ability to talk to NGOs, non-government organizations, who give them a plane ticket, a cell phone, and then the government gives them an NTA, a notice to appear. Okay, you know what a notice to appear is, right? Yes. To a later court date so the immigration judge can make a determination of their case. Boom. So whatever they claim, that's what's on it for their NTA. Now, these NGOs are the ones who assist them getting plane tickets to whatever country, or whatever city they want to go to. They have them cell phones. Some of these systems, depending on the state of apprehension, will give them a almost like a bracelet, right, to identify their location, like a GPS coordinate.
Ankle monitor.
Right, an ankle bracelet, right. And then they ship them off to the airports, or they ship them off to, or bus them to a different city who's a sanctuary city. That's the process. So there is no holding anymore. This putting them in prisons, that doesn't happen anymore. That happened back in 2010, 11, 12, that time from now. There is no holding. The longest holding they have is maybe 48 hours to 72 hours at a Border Patrol station location that is a soft side shell. That is the only kind of holding that we even have capabilities of right now because of the massive numbers. And then they get delivered off to whatever city they go to. Okay. That's the current situation. So there is no holding. There's just a massive influx of people going into the countries and cities that they have their sponsors, and they go wherever they want. They can go to Utah, right where you're at, because they have somebody who gives them a phone number and an address. And then from there, they figure it out. That's what's happening currently. So it's no different than kind of what you're saying is what's actually happening.
Okay.
That's I'm just saying that's what's happening now. So with that being said, that's what you want for immigration?
I would like what I would like for immigration. Well, first thing, right off the bat, what I would like is for military service to be automatic citizenship.
Absolutely.
Honorable discharge should be an automatic citizenship.
I agree.
That's the top of the list. You know, that's what we're fighting for these many years. When it comes to immigration in general, I would like to understand why are immigrants so seen as so dangerous to this country? Why is immigration seen as a threat? That's something I've never understood, right?
Right. Okay.
Because is it because of safety of people? There is plenty of crime out there, and the majority of that crime is not committed by immigrants.
Correct.
It's committed by citizens.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. Here's what I think.
Why can't we humanize this conversation? Why is it always like it's an invasion?
Well, right, you're right. I think that's what I try and stay away from, right? You're 100% correct. We have weaponized this conversation. It's not humanized, but it's not humanized on both sides of the argument because your side of the argument is just as aggressive as their side of the argument.
Right.
And instead, right. And so you don't have to be. That's the problem is you believe you have to be. What you should be doing is educating them on why your side is human. And then I say that because I know it is. Yeah. I'm a guy that served overseas against the hardest fucking people. I chased the worst motherfuckers you could ever imagine. And I know we can't use that shit, but either way, I've chased the worst people. And I know they're connected to the United States. So after 9/11, I understand the implementation of Homeland Security. I get it. I've seen it firsthand. Being a Border Patrol agent for 7 years, I saw it firsthand. There are people that come through those borders that are dangerous, but there's also people that come to those borders that have good intentions. Both of those arguments exist. Both sides are just arguing instead of communicating. We're not educating each other on why we both should see something in our side as human.
And I understand that both sides are like, well, not everyone's a bad guy, so we should give them a chance. And there's the other side of that is that, well, what about those bad guys? We can't take a chance, right? Though that's usually what it comes down to. Right. But and this obviously my opinion is going to be biased because I'm an immigrant, right? But I'm very afraid of what happens when you keep polarizing the conversation, when you keep dehumanizing the conversation. And what I fear of the most is of a Gaza event in the United States.
If there's a Gaza event in the United States, it would come from people who are terrorists who never should have been here. Point being, it's not that far. It's not that dramatic. The problem is we can't have conversations like this to move the needle forward because too many people, like you believe a certain way, Daniel, but you don't have to be emotionally invested into the subject as you are, but you should educate these fools, right? Like I do. And
so let me ask you this. What is your wish list when it comes to
my
this?
Wish list?
Yeah. So
I know both sides of this argument intimately. I know it intimately. And I keep saying it. It's not a left and a right argument. This conversation should be completely out of politics. As American citizens have the right to the same thing is we want legal immigration. We want Homeland Security. We want to be safe and we want to have freedoms. The problem is when you say legal immigration, nobody understands that. They hear immediately illegal immigration. There's two different conversations to be had there. Last year, we allowed 1.5 million. The year before, 2.5 million legally. Okay. Now, I also know that process can take 5, 10, 15 years for people to become legal citizens. We need to fix that system. That shouldn't take that long. We should have a streamlined system for people who have proven to give back to this country, who want to be good contributors to our nation. Why not? So they should have a streamlined. 1 second. Let me finish here. As in, that's important because then we won't go from 1.5. We could probably go up to 3.5 once we streamline this system. That's the big thing. We need to also address why some of these countries It's broken to the point where people want to come here. How can we help stabilize those nations so they continue to be fruitful for their own people? We got to establish what's going on in Mexico. We haven't even talked about the corruption and the people that are being extorted by cartel. The money involved in smuggling is ridiculous. That's its own business. These transnational organizations all across the world are making money off of this. So as much as there's a push and a pull in immigration, as in people come here because they need to, or they're forced to come here by other organizations, there's a multi-layered system here that we need to approach. And it's not an argument left or right. It is what we should be doing as humans and what we should do as Americans. This country has to have borders. Every country, every nation has borders. It's not go Google that one. We're not even the most fortified border. All right. We're like number 22 on the list. But the point being is a sovereign nation has rules, laws, and we have to apply those. Our laws are not perfect, but they can get adjusted and we need to fix them. Every president in the past 30, 40 years has not changed anything in immigration that made any significant impacts deeply in it. Deeply. No. You either pardon them or that, but they never fixed the system inherently that was developed in the 55, I believe it was, which inherently was racist originally when it was created. So there's a lot there. I do believe some people in this argument are racist. I think some people like see immigrants and think of it in a bad way, and that's a small percentage. But I think there's a massive percentage that understands immigrants come to this country and they make it better. Actually, if you actually interview more people, you see that the immigrants who come to this country are more patriotic than some of the Americans in this country.
Because we know the value of this country.
Yes, exactly. They know the value of the country, right? They don't take it for granted.
That's right.
That's what's funny to me is people want to argue this, but the conversation is really in the middle. And we never get there if we're emotionally invested in our topic instead of educating people on like, well, here's the truth on this. On your situation as a deported veteran, nobody gets to hear that story. Right? Our conversation today went a whole different direction.
Yeah.
It should have been on deported veterans because I want to bring light to deported veterans. Right. But at the same time, I can't allow you to be angry about the subject without me trying to educate you. Like, hold on, there's a better way of doing this, Daniel. I really believe you have a strong story that can make massive impacts.
And you know, that's basically what I do. I'm not a lawyer in the United States. I'm a Mexican lawyer, so I'm not bar certified here. So the best thing I can do is just, give voice to to this community and help people understand who we are as deported veterans. You said a lot of things, right? I want to address a couple of them. One of the things that you mentioned is that the streamlined process for American citizenship. Yes. But that is like the second and third step of the immigration process to actually get your citizenship. Where we are stuck in, what we need to fix in immigration is the first step. And the first step is requesting residency, or at the very least, requesting work visas.
Yep.
Right? The system to get a work visa. And what is a work visa? A work visa means that you can work here, you can live here temporarily, not permanently, right? And you will be paying taxes and you will not be eligible for benefits. Some benefits, depending on what state you live in, you might be eligible for. Every state has its own benefits,
right,
are separate from federal benefits. But in the majority of benefit cases, at least the social benefits that will affect American citizens, you have to be a citizen to be, or a legal permanent resident at the very least, to receive some of them, not all of them.
Right.
So when I talk about, we should let people come in and work in this country, I'm not saying you're going to give everybody citizenship and they'll be able to vote right off the bat. No, I'm saying instead of treating them like criminals, treat them like human beings, give them a chance to work, give them a chance to start that process, to one day become a citizen. It's not going to be given off the bat.
Right. And when you say treating them like criminals, I don't believe anyone's getting treated like criminals. If you break the law, you break the law. They get treated through the process like anyone, any woman, man. I don't think it's being treated.
That's the other thing. We keep going back and forth of the laws of the country. Yes, of course, every country has to have laws. This country has its laws, and those laws are being enforced, of course. But as a lawyer, you are taught Laws have a purpose, right? And having a law just for the purpose of having a law, that's not a purpose. Laws should provide benefit to our society. Our current immigration laws don't do that.
How does that not create a benefit by making sure that we see who comes through legally, and as well as them using the proper systems of coming to this country legally? How is that not a benefit to keeping the nation safe?
Because the proper systems are not immigration friendly. Like when people say, "Oh, why don't they do it the right way?" There really isn't a right way to do it. Right?
Well, there is, but I also know how challenging it is. Yes, there is a right way, but I know how challenging it is. That's why I said streamline the system.
You probably, a regular person probably has better chances of joining the NFL than an immigrant is going through the right process. That's
1.5 million last year. There's more people. That's way more than the NFL.
1.5 million
legally entered into the country last year. 2.5 the year before. So that's not necessarily true. I'm just saying it's not easy. Yes, we can agree to that. But it needs to be a better system. I agree. I agree with that.
1.5. So that's like what? 0.5% of our population? At 65 million people. 1.5 immigrants is like 0.5% of our
that were entered into the country legally last year. That's
0.5. Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Could be better.
Yeah, absolutely could be better. If it was streamlined, it'd probably be double.
And how many of those 1.5 million are citizens? Because if they're just coming into
1.5 were allowed legally entered into this country in citizens. Maybe not citizens. I have to double check on that.
Yeah, because you're not going to be a citizen even if you come legally. You have to be a resident at least 5 years, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
It depends.
Now, how many of those are student visas? How many of those are work visas? How many of those are family? How many of those
I think it's irrelevant in the sense of it is
husbands
the
and
legal
wives,
process of
right?
The legal process, yeah.
So when you say 1.5 million people, it makes it seem like 1.5 million people showed up at the door and knocked on the United States. Were like, "Can I come in?" And they said,
"No,
yes.
They went through the process."
Right, they went through the process, but there are many different processes. There's people who are only here for study. There's people who are here for temporary work. There's people who are here just for tourism. That is a legal immigrant, right? There's people who are here because they got married to a citizen or because they were born to a military member outside of the United States, right?
So those are all part of the process of identifying who's in the country, who's allowed to be in the country. That's all part of the process, right?
That's all part of the process, yes. So what I just don't want the audience to get the wrong idea of like, oh, okay, well, we got 1.5 million legal immigrants. Good job. We can sleep.
No, but we can't have this conversation without acknowledging that truth as well.
Yeah, I acknowledge that truth. What I'm saying is this is not a black and white issue. And if I want the audience to take anything from it is how difficult and how big the gray area is on this issue, right?
I agree.
And I do believe the United States benefits from immigrants. I do agree. Of course, I'm an immigrant. So I don't
know if it does benefit from illegal immigration. It's not what the country's intended to do, and that is just a form of corruption that I don't think anyone would approve of. Do you know what I'm saying?
We go back to the fight of ideologies. I believe it is immoral to call a human being illegal.
That's fine.
Because you are dehumanizing that person. You are looking at it like it's less than a human being just because they weren't born here.
No, it's not necessarily.
Where you are born.
those are two different ideologies that you're blending. If you look at terminology in the sense, did they enter into the country illegally? Yes. Well, then they would be considered illegal. That's a fact. And the fact of terminology of breaking the law.
We are making those facts. We are the
So
ones
you're saying,
deciding.
so if someone does something as heinous as rape a woman, and if you call him a rapist, oh, I don't like that.
That is a completely different conversation.
No. It's a title. It's a title.
Rapist.
You're giving, no, I'm not comparing the two, not at all. I'm comparing the fact that we give titles to people who do things.
Yes,
if you call a cop,
what
but he's also a human.
Titles are.
A lawyer's a lawyer, but he's still a human.
But we decide what those terms are.
No, you decide how that term affects you.
No, we decide what those terms are. We're the ones writing the laws. We're the ones voting for the people making those laws, right?
Correct.
We decide what the term is.
So what term do you want us to use? Migrants crossing the country into the country not authorized?
Human beings.
But there has to be a term for someone who comes into the country illegally. You can't just say, oh, those are human beings. No, those are human beings who broke the law.
A law that we created, laws that we can't change.
All laws are created.
We can be better. We are at a crucial point right now in the country where we have to decide what kind of country we're going to become going forward.
Yes, but I think you're fighting the wrong fight when you say that. With that argument alone, that's irrelevant for changing this path. You're worried about how people see migrants. You're worried about how the United States, because you really believe that everyone's racist towards illegal immigrants. That's not true.
Not racist per se. I don't want to use the
it is a rooted in racism that you fear that people look at immigrants in a bad way, in a bad light. That's not necessarily everyone. That is a small minority of people who look at immigrants in a
small minority, sir.
What is that?
A very big, small minority.
No, it's a small minority. The media that you believe is telling you it's bigger than it is.
Oh, I don't watch media. I go to the rallies. I go and talk to the people. I try to find out.
The people who go to those rallies are the minority.
Okay, good. That's good to know. That gives me hope.
Because you're thinking about extreme ideologies on the left and the right. You're talking about these political, like making this subject political when it shouldn't be. Remove policy and remove politics from this. And
the moment we talk about laws, the moment we talk about
laws
reform and policies, that makes it political.
Not necessarily. Those are laws in place. That's law, right? Political is parties. You're saying Republican and Democrat. When you infuse that into the argument, you've already lost people because you're already swinging opinion left to right. You're created a narrative.
I don't want to make this a blue versus
that's what you did.
Conversation.
You're the first one in this conversation to mention Republicans. Not me.
I did. Yeah, I did.
That's what I'm saying. You introduced political argument into this.
But I don't want to get sidetracked with the political.
Correct.
Versus
so then this conversation should never have a political sway left or right. There is no agenda here in this conversation. There shouldn't be.
There shouldn't be an agenda, right?
But you were the first one to mention Republican. That's my point. Is like that doesn't help this conversation because right away I was like, oh, okay, well he has a political opinion, and
of course I have. I believe everybody has a political opinion.
I choose not to. I choose not to. I don't say I'm Republican or Democrat. I'm sitting there really in the middle thinking like there's good and bads of everybody. And when this topic as a journalist, I don't want to have a side. I want to hear your opinion. But when your opinion sways too much politically, then it was like, well, let's pull it back because let's remove politics from this and let's talk about the facts of it. Right?
Right.
That's what's important. That's the only way we move this needle. We have to remove our own confirmation bias, our own biases and believing that the world is racist against us. Like, no, that thought doesn't help move the needle. That doesn't fix this.
Have you ever ever suffered racism?
You think I haven't?
I don't know.
I think everyone in the existence of America has suffered some form of racism.
You were so focused on the racist part of the conversation. I'm kind of
because the way you lean and the way you converse about this topic, you feel that there's a racist tone towards it, and I get that.
Racism is definitely a part of the conversation because most of these laws stemmed from racist policies. I
agreed with you. Back from the beginning.
Back to the 1996 immigration reform under the Clinton administration, which was pushed because they believed that the Oklahoma City bombings were done by terrorists and by immigrants. That originally, when the Oklahoma City bombing happened, they thought that it was immigrants and it was terrorists who did it. So there was this huge like immigration concern. Later came out that it was an American citizen who did the bombings, but that was enough to push the 1996 immigration reform, and that's how military veterans got caught up in that whole issue.
Okay.
And that's where Deported Veterans, how it started. There is an expert on the 1996 immigration reform called Margaret Stock, and you should definitely reach out to her, and I'll send her an email and let her know. Margaret Stock, she's an expert when it comes to immigration policies and immigration laws, and I think you could have a very good podcast with her.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I want to. My goal is not to argue with anyone. It's not even to have a discussion like this. My goal is to highlight people's stories. I wish we spent an hour talking about deported veterans. I wish we talked about your story of it being a deported veteran and how we can help improve the messaging for this. I wish we focused on the 400 veterans who've been deported who are still looking for assistance. That's what the goal was for this podcast. When you bring in politics to this, it really sways this conversation. Like I won't allow people to use narratives in this. It's not fair to the conversation.
Unfortunately, you cannot have one conversation without the other, because
but you can because
deported veterans happened because of politics.
So did it happen during did it happen during the Obama administration? Yes. Did it happen during the Trump administration? Yes. So then that's a left and a right. That's a Democrat and Republican. So then it's irrelevant. It happens no matter what.
When I'm talking about politics, I don't mean Republican versus Democrat.
But you said that.
When I'm talking, no, I didn't. When I'm talking about politics, I'm talking about the policies of administrations, both Democrat and Republican. Listen, when I say I'm disillusioned with the United States government, I really mean that, okay? Because I've met with Bernie Sanders. I've met with Kamala Harris. I've met with Trump. I've met with all of them. And they all say the same thing. Oh my God, this is terrible. We have to bring our veterans home. This is not okay. This is not what America stands for. And we still have veterans being deported. We still have veterans dying in exile. We just had another veteran of our brothers die down in Ensenada about a week ago. Okay. So this is a failure of both parties.
Absolutely.
When it comes to deported veterans.
Absolutely.
Both Democrats and Republicans have deported veterans, and they're not doing anything about it. Because why? Oh, the conversation's not there right now. Oh, public opinion is not there right now. And then we go to the major stream companies and the major TV networks and say, hey, want to prepare a docuseries about this issue in order to inform. Oh, that show is just not sexy enough. Unfortunately, everybody says that the veterans should not be deported. Everybody agrees that deported veterans is a bad stain in the United States.
Anything else you want to close out with?
I don't want people to get pigeonholed, or I don't want people to think that the immigration discussion is one way or one-sided. It's not a good guy versus bad guy issue. It's not a black and white issue. You do have to talk about politics. You do have to talk about laws. You do have to talk about racism. You do have to talk about all of those issues, because it's all part of it. It's such a complicated problem. It's such a complicated issue. But I believe, and it's my personal opinion, that in order to move forward and be a better country and be the nation that we were told the United States is, we do have to embrace humanity, and we do have to embrace people not as illegal or legal, good guys or bad guys, but as human beings. And once we change that perspective, then we can start building a system that works for the country, for our society, and for immigrants.
Good. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for your opinions, and thank you for your time, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Borderland, an Ironclad original. When we decided to do this podcast, it was to help move the needle in a direction that could hopefully bring our society closer together. This conversation is very complex. This conversation could go many different ways. And usually when someone talks about the conversation, it's something that's near and dear to them, but they seem to forget about the rest of the conversation, the many different branches on this tree. I'm doing my best as a pseudo journalist, as someone who is an expert in the field, to allow people to have their opinions on the topic, but some of those opinions can potentially be on the pretenses of a false narrative on something that I know is not factual. And so in that case, I want to allow the conversation to continue to put out a narrative that we know is false. I think it's only fair that we have a place that has fair discourse and honest discourse as much as possible. There's people we've interviewed that have said things I've never heard of, and I asked them where they got that information from. They were able to give me the exact area, not only that, to give us links so we can look it up. Each one of the people that we interview go through a process of being pre-interviewed by my team. And so we have a lot of confidence that we're bringing the utmost experts in their field for these interviews to give you the best conversation, the fairest conversation possible about the border topic. Sometimes it doesn't go as planned. And I have to question sometimes my own professionalism and my own emotions in this subject, because I too am connected to this deeply. And so I do my best to give you the best information from the best experts in their field without pushing too much of my own bias on there, because I don't think that's even fair. And so in doing this, I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm learning a lot about the topic, and I hope you are as well. But I am not a perfect journalist or podcast host. I am just a man with my own experiences, my own emotions, and I do my best to give you the fairest side of the information so you can do what you want with that. It's about education. It's about information. It's about hopefully bringing together this country that is so divided by hopefully trying to agree somewhere on this topic. And I thank you for listening.